I've always been enamored with tattoos. Each one a fragment of my life, a symbol of my journey. My skin, a tapestry of art, narrated tales of love, loss, and moments of wild rebellion. But recently, things have taken a turn for the bizarre. It started subtly, almost unnoticeably. One morning, I woke up and found this small sparrow tattoo on my ankle had migrated to my wrist. I brushed it off as a trick of my sleepy eyes. But then, it happened again. The mandala on my back appeared on my shoulder. I knew something was amiss, something far from normal. I live alone, a choice I've cherished for its peace and autonomy. My apartment, a quaint cluttered space filled with souvenirs from my travels and shelves of books, has always been my sanctuary. But now, it felt different, as though the walls bore silent witness to a secret I couldn't unravel. That particular morning, the one that marked the true beginning of this nightmare, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, my eyes tracing the contours of a tattoo I didn't recognize. A dark intricate symbol, unfamiliar and foreboding, resting ominously on my forearm. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't remember getting this tattoo. My mind raced, trying to recall the events of the previous night, but there was only a blank space where memories should have been. Fear, a cold, unsettling presence, began to creep into my thoughts. What was happening to me? As I stared at my reflection, a realization dawned on me: my body was no longer my own. It had become a battleground for a phenomenon I couldn't understand, a mystery I was now compelled to solve. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would lead me to the darkest quarters of my own soul. That day, I couldn't shake off the unease that clung to me like a second skin. The unknown symbol on my forearm seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, a stark, uninvited intrusion into my world. I tried to go about my day, but my thoughts were anchored to the mystery etched into my skin. As evening fell, I decided to confront this head-on. I rummaged through my drawers, finding a notebook and a pen. I began to document every tattoo on my body, meticulously sketching their designs and noting their positions. I needed to understand if there was a pattern, a reason behind their nocturnal wanderings. Sleep eluded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined the ink beneath my skin stirring, reshaping itself into something new, something alien. When morning came, bleary-eyed and exhausted, I checked the tattoos against my notes. They had shifted again, subtly, but unmistakably. Panic set in. This wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was real, and it was happening to me. I needed answers. I started with the internet, typing in every possible combination of words that could explain my predicament. But nothing came up, no condition, no phenomenon, nothing that even remotely resembled what I was experiencing. I decided to seek help from the outside world. I visited local tattoo artists, hoping someone would have heard of this. Each encounter ended in baffled looks and shrugged shoulders. One artist suggested it might be a reaction to the ink, but the explanation fell short. This wasn't an allergic reaction, it was something far more profound and unnerving. The new tattoo, the one I couldn't remember getting, felt like a key to this mystery. I studied it, trying to decipher its origin or meaning. It was an intricate mix of symbols and patterns, unfamiliar yet eerily captivating. It felt ancient, a relic of a time and knowledge long forgotten. As the days passed, the shifts became more pronounced. What once were subtle movements turned into drastic relocations. The dragon that coiled around my upper arm one day would be entwined around my leg the next. My body was no longer mine, it was a shifting landscape, an unpredictable canvas for these wandering tattoos. The isolation set in then. Friends who had once admired my tattoos, now looked at me with a mix of fear and disbelief. Conversations dwindled, invitations ceased, and I found myself retreating further into my own world, a world that was becoming increasingly surreal and frightening. Then, one night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a terrifying thought occurred to me. What if these tattoos were trying to tell me something? What if they were a map, a guide leading me somewhere? The thought was absurd, yet it clung to me, feeding my curiosity and fear in equal measure. I got up and stood in front of the mirror, studying the chaotic tapestry that my body had become. And then, I saw it. The tattoos, in their seemingly random arrangement, were forming something coherent. It was a map, a crudely drawn map that pointed to a specific location in town, an old, abandoned building that everyone in town knew, but no one spoke about. I felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with dread. This was no longer just about finding answers, it was about confronting whatever lay at the heart of this mystery. As I looked at the reflection of the map on my skin, a decision settled within me. I was going to follow this map, follow it to wherever it led me, and find out the truth behind the ink that had become my curse. The next day, under the guise of a gray, overcast sky, I found myself standing in front of the old, abandoned building. Its dilapidated walls and boarded-up windows whispered tales of forgotten times. The air was thick with the scent of decay and neglect. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the place the map on my skin had led me to. The building loomed over me, an ominous sentinel guarding secrets I was yet to uncover. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, pushing open the creaking, rusted gate. As I navigated through the debris and rubble, the silence was suffocating. Each step echoed through the empty halls, amplifying my growing apprehension. The tattoos on my skin felt alive, almost buzzing with anticipation as I delved deeper into the building. I reached a room that felt different from the rest. It was colder, the air heavier. My eyes were drawn to a series of old, faded photographs pinned to the wall. There were pictures of people, each adorned with tattoos strikingly similar to mine. The cold realization crept over me. I wasn't the first to experience this. In the center of the room was a dusty, old book. Its pages were yellowed with age, filled with cryptic writings and sketches of symbols like the ones on my skin. As I flipped through it, a name kept recurring: the Ink of Eden. It spoke of an ancient ink, said to be imbued with the life force of its wearer, shifting and changing to reveal truths long buried. The more I read, the more the walls of reality seemed to crumble around me. Was I bearing an ancient curse? Was this the reason behind the shifting tattoos? I spent hours poring over the book, trying to piece together the information. Night had fallen by the time I left the building, the weight of the revelations heavy on my shoulders. The following days were a blur. I was consumed by the need to understand the nature of my tattoos. I visited more tattoo artists, delved into obscure forums online, and even consulted a historian specializing in ancient symbology. But the answers were always just out of reach, the truth slipping through my fingers like sand. My friends and family grew increasingly concerned. I was withdrawn from the world, my focus narrowed to the ink on my skin and its cryptic messages. They couldn't see what I saw, they couldn't understand the pull, the obsession that had taken hold of me. Then, one night, something changed. As I lay in bed, a sharp burning sensation spread across my skin. I rushed to the mirror and watched in horror as the tattoos began to move, coalescing into a single, large symbol on my back. It was a map, more detailed than before, its lines and curves pointing unmistakably back to the abandoned building. I knew then that I had to return, that the answers I sought lay hidden in that forsaken place. The building wasn't just a location, it was a gateway, a portal to the truths hidden within the Ink of Eden. With a sense of grim determination, I prepared to venture back into the shadows of the old building. Little did I know, the horrors that awaited me were beyond anything I could have imagined. The ink had begun its final act, drawing me into the heart of a darkness that would test the very limits of my sanity. The night was unsettlingly still as I stood once again before the decrepit building, the moon casting an eerie glow on its broken facade. My heart was a cacophony of beats, each thud echoing the fear and anticipation coursing through my veins. The tattoos on my skin felt alive, almost writhing under the moonlight as if they too sensed the impending climax of our journey. I pushed open the heavy door, its groan sounding like a lament for the damned. The darkness inside was suffocating, a tangible entity that seemed to swallow the weak beam of my flashlight. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something else, a faint metallic tang that made my stomach churn. As I navigated the labyrinthine corridors, guided by the map etched into my skin, a sense of dread grew with each step. The building seemed to breathe around me, its walls whispering secrets in a language I couldn't understand but felt deep in my bones. Finally, I reached the heart of the building. A vast cavernous room shrouded in shadows. There, in the center, stood a figure, barely discernible in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat. The figure stepped forward, emerging from the darkness, and my blood turned to ice. It was the tattoo artist who had inked a mysterious symbol on my arm. The inception of my nightmare. His eyes were like voids, dark and endless, and a cruel smile played on his lips. "You've come," he said, his voice a melody of malice. "You seek answers, but are you prepared for the truth?" I stood frozen, my mind racing. How did he know? Who was he? He circled me, his gaze never leaving mine. "The Ink of Eden," he began, "is ancient, as old as time itself. It is alive, sentient. It chooses its bearer and reveals truths that are hidden deep within their soul." My skin crawled as he spoke. The tattoos on my body seemed to respond to his words, shifting subtly, a silent language of their own. "You bear the ink now," he continued. "It has shown you the way, led you to this moment. But the ink demands a price: your memories, your life force. That's why you can't remember the nights. The ink feeds on you." I felt a surge of horror and anger. Why me? Why did you do this to me? He laughed, a sound that chilled my very soul. "You were chosen, not by me, but by the ink itself. Your soul resonated with its ancient call. But fear not, for you are now part of something greater. You are the vessel of the ink's will." I realized then that I was trapped in a web far more complex and ancient than I could have imagined. The ink was not just a series of tattoos, it was an entity, a being that had latched onto me, feeding off my very essence. In a desperate bid for freedom, I lunged at him, but he merely stepped aside, his laughter echoing in the hollow room. I felt a surge of pain as the tattoos on my skin writhed violently, as if punishing me for my defiance. "You cannot fight it," he said. "You are bound to the ink, as it is bound to you. Embrace it, and you will understand." Tears streamed down my face as I grappled with the reality of my situation. I was a prisoner, bound to an ancient curse that I could neither understand nor escape. The artist's words echoed in my mind: I was part of something greater, a pawn in a game that spanned eons. As I stood there, the weight of my fate crushing me, I knew that my journey was far from over. The ink had plans for me, and I was powerless to resist. The darkness of the room seemed to close in on me, and in that moment, I understood the true nature of my curse. I was the ink's vessel, and it would never let me go. In the suffocating darkness of that room, with the sinister tattoo artist's words ringing in my ears, a desperate resolve took hold of me. I couldn't let this be my end. There had to be a way to break free from the ink's malevolent grip. I stumbled through the building, my mind racing, searching for anything that could help me. The tattoos on my skin pulsed with a malevolent energy, as if mocking my efforts to escape their hold. But then, in a cluttered, dust-laden room, I found something that sparked a glimmer of hope: the artist's notes, a chaotic collection of scribbles and sketches, detailing his experiments with the ink of Edenim. Frantically, I sifted through the papers, my eyes catching glimpses of rituals, incantations, and, crucially, a way to remove the cursed ink. It was a dangerous, painful process, requiring ingredients that seemed almost as mythical as the ink itself. But it was a chance, no matter how slim. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I left the building, the dawn light seeming surreal after the night's horrors. The world outside felt different, distant, as if I were a ghost drifting through it. In the days that followed, I gathered what I needed for the ritual. It was a race against time, as the ink continued to feed on me, each night more aggressive than the last. I could feel myself growing weaker, my memories starting to fray at the edges. Then came the night of the ritual. I prepared a space in my apartment, following the instructions with meticulous care. The ingredients were rare and strange, but somehow, I had managed to procure them all. I was ready. The ritual was excruciating. As I chanted the ancient words, the ink writhed on my skin, as if in protest. I poured every ounce of my will into the incantations, fighting against the searing pain that coursed through my body. The room spun, shadows dancing on the walls, the air thick with the scent of burning herbs, and a metallic tang of blood. And then, suddenly, it was over. I collapsed to the floor, my body spent, my mind teetering on the brink of consciousness. But I could feel it. The ink was gone. My skin, once a tapestry of shifting tattoos, was now marred only by scars, each one a testament to my ordeal. I had done it. I had broken free from the ink of Edenim. In the weeks that followed, I tried to piece my life back together. My friends and family, who had watched me descend into madness, welcomed me back with a mixture of relief and wariness. I couldn't blame them. I was not the same person I had been before the ink had claimed me. I found solace in solitude, in the quiet moments where I could reflect on my experience. The scars on my skin were a constant reminder of the darkness I had faced, a darkness that was still out there, lurking in the shadows of the world. But there was one thing I hadn't noticed, one small detail that escaped my attention in the aftermath of the ritual. Hidden behind my ear, almost invisible to the casual observer, was a tiny tattoo, a remnant of the cursed ink, a symbol that I didn't recognize. It was a chilling reminder that some bonds are not so easily broken, that some curses linger, biding their time. And as I traced the outline of that small tattoo, a shiver ran down my spine. The ink's malevolence was still a part of me, a silent, waiting shadow that might one day stir again. In the quiet aftermath of my harrowing ordeal, life settled into a semblance of normalcy, but it was a fragile, uneasy peace. The world around me resumed its mundane rhythm, yet I remained tethered to the nightmarish realm of the ink of Edenim. The tiny tattoo behind my ear was a constant, unspoken reminder of the darkness that had once consumed me. I tried to move on, to bury the memories of those terrifying nights under layers of everyday routine. I returned to work, reconnected with friends, and even started exploring new hobbies. But the sense of normality was superficial. Beneath the surface, fear and paranoia simmered, a silent undercurrent in my daily life. Nighttime became a battleground of anxiety. Each evening, as shadows lengthened and the world quieted, a sense of dread would settle over me. I found myself inspecting my skin obsessively, searching for any sign of the ink's movement, any hint that the curse was reawakening. But the tattoo remained still, an enigmatic symbol that offered no answers. Despite the overwhelming desire to forget, I couldn't ignore the lingering questions that haunted me. What was the meaning of the symbol behind my ear? Why had the ink spared this one tattoo? Was it a sign, a warning, or something more sinister? The unknowns gnawed at me, a constant itch at the back of my mind. I sought out therapy, hoping to find solace in sharing my story. But the truth was too bizarre, too fantastical. The few times I attempted to broach the subject, I was met with skeptical looks and veiled doubts about my sanity. So I learned to keep the story to myself, a dark secret locked away in the recesses of my mind. As the months passed, the incidents of that fateful time began to feel like a distant dream, a surreal chapter in my life. Yet, the scars on my skin served as a tangible reminder of the reality of my experience. They were a map of pain and survival, each line a testament to the battle I had fought and won. But the victory was incomplete. The presence of the tattoo, hidden away but ever present, was a silent sentinel, a warning of dangers still lurking in the unseen corners of the world. It whispered of mysteries and ancient powers, of a darkness that was far from vanquished. In the end, I accepted that some truths were too vast, too incomprehensible for the human mind to fully grasp. The ink of Edenim was one such truth, a phenomenon that straddled the line between reality and myth, its full extent hidden in the shadows of the unknown. I learned to live with the uncertainty, to embrace the ambiguity of my experience. The world was a richer, more mysterious place than I had ever imagined, filled with wonders and horrors beyond understanding. And somewhere, in the depth of that mystery, the ink of Edenham remained, a dormant enigma waiting for the next chapter of his eternal story. As I look back, I realize that my journey with the ink was not just a battle for survival, but a journey of self-discovery. It taught me about the resilience of the human spirit, the power of hope in the face of unimaginable darkness, and the profound mystery that lies at the heart of existence. And so, I move forward, carrying the scars and the unanswered questions as badges of my journey. The world is a vast, unfathomable tapestry, and I am but a single thread, woven into its intricate design, forever changed by the ink's malevolence.